Hi everyone. We're back. We're back here doing this again. I'm glad we're back here doing this again. Oh, let's see here. Well, I got something today, and we're going to see if this works. Um, this is a tough one, only because it's conceptually very, very difficult, and it's hard to get words to go to the place. But we're going to talk a little bit about emptiness today in a very particular way. I'm trying to get at a very, very difficult thing to talk about. Emptiness, the principle of emptiness or sunyata in Buddhism is famously difficult to talk about. Everybody knows that. And certainly anybody who's ever tried to give a talk about it knows, oof, where do you start, right? But we'll play with it today. And to make it a little easier, I like to get at it a little bit sideways instead of trying to talk about it strictly through concepts. That's cool too. And I think for some people that works better the way that I'm wired. Metaphor and oftentimes non-Buddhist examples help me. Because what I don't want ever to imagine is that the doctrine of, and it's even called a doctrine, which is, I don't know, kind of funny to me. But anyway, the doctrine of emptiness in Buddhism is some sort of Buddhist idea. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me for reasons that I hope this talk will highlight, right? Um, it's a little bit like gravity being an Isaac Newton idea. Like, well, not really, right? So we'll see. We'll see how we do. The piece of paper in front of me says "The Emptiness of the Creator" is the title of this talk, and I don't know if I'm going to go with that or not. It seems kind of, I don't know, a little like a little purposefully combative or purposefully triggering or something. But I don't know. It also is kind of true, and it sort of fits in with the talk. So what we're talking about today is emptiness, and what we're going to use today as our welcome mat, our catalyst, our opening salvo is a quote from Ahmad Jamal. And Ahmad Jamal said, "I don't create, I discover. The Creator creates, and I'm a discoverer of what has already been created." So that's an interesting quote, and I will read it again, but I'll read it again after I tell you who Ahmad Jamal is. Some of you know who Ahmad Jamal is. If you don't, that's perfectly fine. He's a famous jazz musician. He's a pianist. Um, and he would be asked, as musicians and artists and writers and poets, and they always seem to go, where do you get your ideas? How do you create your blah, 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 right? Because we're always fascinated by the process of creation, and we're fascinated by artists of any type who seem to have a facility that we do not, right? There's all sorts of lies built into that idea, all sorts of misunderstandings that some people create and some people don't, but in its crudest possible expression, we imagine that some people have creative potential that others do not, and they are creative people and we are not, and they create and we don't. So I'm sure he was asked, I'm guessing, because this quote sort of implies he was responding to the question, oh, tell us about your creation, tell us about your creative process, tell us about, where do you get your song ideas, that kind of stuff. um, and so he answered the way that he did, and I will read it for you one more time. Ahmad Jamal said, I don't create, I discover. The Creator creates, and I'm a discoverer of what has already been created. Wow, that's a fascinating quote. Ahmad Jamal, I believe, was a Muslim. I have it in my head that he was an Islamic man. So uh, he may have had a particular religious or spiritual belief system into which that quote fit, and he might have had a lot more to say about that. And so I'm not planning today to speak on his behalf, nor am I imagining that I'm speaking on behalf of his belief. What I just found fascinating when I read this quote was, I went, oh, there's something there. I don't create, I discover. I think there's something really interested in that. So he viewed his musical creations, because conventionally speaking, of course he created all the time. He wrote pieces and pieces and pieces. He wrote in albums and albums and albums full of music. that he created, right? Again, in conventional terms. So for him to say, no, I'm not creative and I didn't create, I discovered them, they were already there. That idea felt very kind of Mahayana Buddhist to me. It felt very Mahayana Buddhist to me. Um, and I don't know how far down this road I'm going to go here today, but one of the things that meditators discover pretty early, usually, even outside of a Buddhist tradition, they're doing Christian contemplative prayer, or they're doing breath work, they're doing mindfulness practice. So pretty early in any kind of self-reflective contemplative practice, we begin to recognize, oh, I don't have as much influence over my thoughts as I thought I did, because usually we're telling them to stop or quiet down, and they don't. And so we may even have the insight that people, of course, have been having for many thousands of years, which is, oh dear, I am not those. I must not be them. Number one, I have influence, but I don't have control over them. And of course, I can observe them. I must not be them, right? Anything we can observe, we are not. Thoughts, especially for human beings, have a, a pregnancy, a power, because we imagine, most of us, without ever being told this, we imagine that our thoughts are ours. They're ours. I thought them. I can't find the moment of choice. I can't find the moment that I decided to think them. I can't find the part of me that chose to think them in the order that they happened. So that's interesting. We tend to think they're ours. We tend to think they say a tremendous amount about us. And we tend, unless we examine them, to imagine that they're true. That's our default setting. I am my thoughts. I think them. Their content says something about me. And they're true. I don't know, maybe you're an exception to these rules, but doesn't seem to be. So when we start meditating, when we start doing mindfulness practice or whatever kind of self-reflective practice we're doing, and we start learning, wow, actually, I have no idea where that thought came from. I don't remember consciously choosing to create it. I'm very positive, in fact, that I did not. And a lot of the content of my thoughts are either untrue, repetitive, kind of boring, nasty, and maybe they don't say anything about me other than repeating some headlines that crudely describe things that I have already experienced. Maybe they say less about who I am and more about what has happened to me. Our relationship with thinking consciousness, our relationship with our thoughts changes really, really pretty fundamentally when we start to meditate. So when someone says, wow, you created that song, I kind of get why. There'd be part of Ahmad Jamal who'd be like, no, I don't think I did. Because when we start to realize, boy, I didn't really choose to think that thought, the idea that Busho, the clever human, could have a good idea that was his gets a little fuzzy, doesn't it? What if we're all brainstorming on how we think we should best solve a problem together? And I have the idea to do A, B, and C. Good idea, Busho. Okay. But if I actually watch the process of thoughts arising, the thought just arose. Did I think it? Or did it just appear? Did it think itself? I don't know. But I do know that after many, many years of watching my thinking, my ideas, I have less and less and less and less ego identity with them. I identify and own them much, much, much less than I did. In other words, I kind of get when Ahmad Jamal said, it was just there. I'm like, yeah, I get that. I get that. Pay attention to this in your own meditation practice. Notice how you imagine that your thoughts are yours. Notice how you imagine that you are the thinker of them. Notice how you imagine that they're true. And especially notice on a more of emotional level how you imagine they say something about you. that they mean something about you. If you're thinking deep thoughts, you're a deep person. If you're thinking shallow thoughts, you're a shallow person. If you're thinking greedy thoughts, you are greed, right? That's interesting. So he's imagining, Ahmad Jamal, our teacher for today, is not imagining he's the creator of those things. He's imagining he's the one who interfaced with them. He just discovered them, right? So we understand this because we all understand that Copernicus did not create the heliocentric solar system. He just saw it. He discovered it. Discovered, like it was covered, it was unknown, and then he uncovered it, or took the cover off, right? He uncovered. He became aware of it. He discovered the heliocentric solar system, which was already there. He discovered it. Isaac Newton didn't create gravity. He discovered it. Leif Erikson didn't discover. Well, he discovered the North American continent. He didn't create it. And of course, even that isn't true because people were already here. And for his culture, he was the one who made the awareness of it possible. Leif Erikson, North America. Wow. So let's take that one step further and go, Buddha didn't create Dharma, right? He made discoveries about experience. He shared them. He made a decision to share them, right? Just like Leif Erikson told people how he got to America, and Isaac Newton taught about gravity, and Copernicus said, you know, it sort of seems like Earth revolves around the sun, you guys. They all decided to share. Ahmad Jamal decided to share. So were those discoveries that Buddha made his? And now that you are a practitioner and you notice these same things, as you are encouraged to do, are they now yours? So what we're playing with here is the ownership. Can you feel how we get graspy? Can you feel how we get graspy when the ownership function ignites? Right? Right now in this country, there's even some there's some energy around Columbus not being the discoverer of America. And so even saying Leif Erikson, who clearly beat him by like 500 odd years, was the discoverer, and now that becomes a point of contention. There's all sorts of politics attached to that. I also understand. But what we're talking about, and the only reason we care, and the only reason there's a zzz, is because we imagine there's an ownership. The North American continent, which is just what we call it, was already here, and it couldn't have cared less whose foot touched it from the water, right? Who had that color skin, who came from that culture for the first time. What? Can we imagine the difference between our relationship with our experience if we don't continue to imagine that it's ours? If we don't continue to imagine that it's ours, there's an ownership and there's an ego identity there. So in order for all those things to happen, there's got to be a self. There's got to be something that imagines that it's separate. Leif Erikson, not Columbus. Busho, not your idea. That was my idea, not your idea. My idea, not your idea. Right? There's got to be a self. It's got to be separate. And there's got to be an object. Anything that we separate, therefore, has an objective. It's me, Busho, is an object, separate from you. My idea is an object, separate from yours. Can you feel how ego functioning is just breaking all of those things down and dividing them? And then because I have an investment in self and an investment is in ego as Homo sapiens, I extend that value or lack thereof into feelings of pride, of ownership, or shame onto the thing that I did, the thought that I had, the property that I owned, the thing that I wrote, the thing I discovered. Can you feel it? So what I can hear in Ahmad Jamal's quote, and hopefully this will start to streamline now, because I know these are abstract ideas, folks. What I can hear in his quote is a tremendous amount of humility. I didn't create it, I just discovered it. My hands just went there, and those notes happened. I was there when it happened, right? But I can feel, I imagine that I can feel his sense of humility and the clarity of his insight. right? Were those qualities actually present in him? Am I speaking on behalf of him? No, I would never do such a thing. I don't know. But that's where I go, is I go, wow, what a humble thing to say. I didn't create it. I just discovered it. And the clarity of insight, I'm writing that down because I'm using those words because I have had the experience of going, oh, that would be a good idea. And then I say it out loud and it is a good idea. And someone says, wow, what a great idea. And I'm aware I have no idea where that came from. I literally cannot claim it as mine. I can't. I was there when it happened. And so I'm imagining Ahmad Jamal sitting at the piano and those notes come and he watches his hands do that and goes, I'll be darned, that's really nice. Wow, great piece, Ahmad. What a great creator you are. And like, no, man, I was just in the room when it happened. Right? This isn't a disavowing. This isn't a separating. It's just understanding the flow is happening and I am part of that flow. Creation is happening and I am part of that creation. Dharma is happening. Experience is happening and I am part of it. But I don't always need to separate it down and then attach value and then ownership. And now I have all sorts of problems. Right? This is an advanced teaching. It's talked about over and over and over in Buddhist circles as being an origin point for suffering, right? The sense of self, the sense of other, then the arising of grasping, the arising of aversion, the thing we want more of, the thing we want less of, right? And all of this is woven into what I'm saying. This is something that's spoken about a lot in Buddhist circles because of our insight, the insight, your insight, my insight. It's just a discovery of, wait, things actually don't have an abiding nature. Emptiness is the nature of things, right? So to go a little further with Ahmad Jamal, then we'll talk a little bit about Nagarjuna. We'll see if this actually works, and we'll wrap it up. For our friend here, Ahmad, to say, hey, I didn't bring this into being from a state of non-existence. I came upon it. I discovered its existence, like you witness your thoughts. Its existence and my discovery of its existence were a mutual and simultaneous arising. This is what we call dependent co-origination or dependent co-arising in Buddhism. You can look it up. Dependent co-arising. It and me arise together. The sound and my hearing of it arise together, right? Mutual and simultaneous. The existence of the song catalyzes Ahmad Jamal's existence just as much as his existence catalyzes the existence of the song. Right? The moment of discovery is mutual. The moment of discovery is mutual. The painting discovers me as I paint it. I discover the painting as I paint it. Right? So let's just pretend I do a real quick drawing. Real quick. The image that I create is looking up at me, seeing me in the same way that I look down and see it. Right? Image and the creator of image create each other simultaneously. This isn't me using magical thinking and imagining the thing I just did is alive in the same way that I am, and this isn't projection in that sense, and this isn't anthropomorphizing in this sense. I'm just using this as a clumsy metaphor to say a second ago the thing that just happened hadn't happened, and the thing that just happened because we were both there for it. Without the drawing, I couldn't have had that experience. Without me, the drawing couldn't exist, right? So what we call creating is actually a relationship that cannot exist without both creator and created. They are mutually dependent. They're not separate. A number of times over the years when I would meet with my teacher, thank you, I would say, thank you. Thank you for being my teacher. It's a beautiful thing to say. Nothing wrong with that. And often, I would be met with, without a student, there's no teacher. That's just true. That's not false humility. I had nothing to do with it. No, you had everything to do with it because, right? When the student is ready, the teacher appears, as the old saying goes. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. That just means they show up at the same moment. They can't exist without each other. They literally can't. A teacher without a student isn't a teacher. A student without a teacher isn't a student. They need each other, creator and created. Right? To say I created it implies that I was there first and I predated it, and it was through my own power that I brought it into being, and because of me and my great creative power, it went from non-being to being. Can you imagine? Oh my God, I think I'm God. Therefore, its existence is dependent upon me. I continue to own it. Can you feel that? It's my painting. I made it. It used to be nothing, and now it is something. So not only is there a huge delusion there, but we can feel there's a huge amount of just unconscious ego need being projected all over this experience, right? Why? Because it's separating and it's objectifying. It's separating and objectifying the thing that we imagine that we created, because we now have ownership over that separate object, and we have an agenda for it. Separation, objectification, and then we have a value. If it's a bad painting, we feel ashamed because we imagine that we are bad. If it's a good painting, we feel pride because we imagine we are good. Can you feel it? How blurry the sense of self and other is? And yet the separation has happened, right? And I'm sure, as you can all see, this is how we live our whole lives. I mean, this is just how human consciousness works. We're not imagining we're going to change the nature of human consciousness to go from a duality to a non-duality. We wouldn't be able to go to the groceries, right? I would need a car, and I need keys, and I need a bag, and I need a wallet, and I need a bank account, and I need groceries, and I have all, I mean, there's no anything, right? No. The point isn't to dissolve into a state where everything is the same. The point is just to recognize how the function of ego does create separation, and how it does objectify, and then how it grabs onto that object and either pushes it away because it doesn't like it, or grabs onto it and tries to own it because it does like it. There isn't an enemy here. There's just a function to be seen. Because that function is a tool. A tool is a function, right? A function is a tool. And it's really important. Because when it is time to go grocery shopping, I have to understand the keys and the car and currency and driving. And I have to understand raspberries and tofu. And I have to understand carts. And I have to understand eating. I have to understand all those things. Every single one of those steps I separated. Every single one of those steps I had ownership and an agenda. Every single one of those steps, there was a value and a non-value place. That's the right way to go to the grocery store. That's the wrong way. Those are the raspberries you want. Those are the ones you don't want. That's the thing to put in the cart. That's the thing to not put in the cart. That's the thing to eat for this body that helps it stay strong. That's the thing not to eat. There's nothing wrong with this function. But I do, as a meditator, really want to understand, oh, the function isn't indicative or indicative of reality. It's just indicative of how human consciousness functions and how it breaks reality down into bits that it can use to help sustain it. That's all it's there for. That's just part of my humanity. So, the teaching of emptiness is it's not a state of consciousness. People always think emptiness is a state. It's not a state any more than gravity is a state. Gravity just is. It's just the nature of things. Emptiness, same thing. It's just the nature of it's the nature of reality itself. And we don't see it as such because we do employ this device, this human device of separating and applying value and pulling and pushing. And that's what we need to do. We need to imagine that things are discrete. We need to imagine that I can own that car. When I look really, 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 really closely at the thing I call ownership, when I look really, 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 really closely at the thing I call car, I can't find it. They disappear immediately. But it's still okay that I do it. I just want to be the one who knows that I'm doing it. What I love about what Ahmad Jamal said is it seemed the opposite. It seemed like good medicine, what he said, for the part of us that imagines, I wrote it. It's mine. And you can't have it unless you pay, or you can't have it unless you like it. And if you don't like it, then you don't like me, and now I'm angry at you. And that is the way we normally operate. It's good medicine for that. I hope it also helps to depotentiate some of the suffering that we cause ourselves when we are proud of or ashamed of the thoughts that we think, right? Pride is just the shadow of shame, right? Pride is the defense against shame. And when we start to watch our thinking, we start to watch our thought consciousness when we're sitting. We really start to watch it. We all experience pride and shame. I can't believe I'm thinking about that again. I told that thought to go away. I'm so bad for thinking that. I'm so bad for thinking at all. Why do they keep coming unbidden? How come that how come that song is still stuck in my head? Right? Everybody knows that one. Everybody knows that. That song's been stuck in my head all week. I've been trying to get rid of it. Right? We actually know, wow, I have some influence up there, but boy, not very much. I don't make very many of the choices. Why do I imagine that they're mine? And again, why do I imagine that they mean something about me? I'm supposed to be thinking really deep Zen thoughts, and instead all I can think about is lunch. And now I'm ashamed because I think that means something about me. Ahmad Jamal's quote is a wonderful piece of medicine for us. I didn't create that. I was there when it happened, and now I get to make a decision. So let's see if we can wrap this up by pulling in the second Buddha. They call him the second Buddha. Some people do still call him the second Buddha. He's a Indian sage from India, an Indian spiritual teacher called Nagarjuna. I've got some numbers in my head about when I think he was born, but I'm not going to say them because I'm only about 60% sure, and I'm just as likely to get it wrong. But Nagarjuna, Nagarjuna, Nagarjuna. It's actually spelled like it sounds. I just got it in my head there. Nagarjuna comes along, and quite a while after Buddha's been dead, some hundreds of years, and he is they did call him the second Buddha. He was just the most gifted teacher of the principle of emptiness, the doctrine of emptiness. And again, I don't like the word doctrine there because for one thing, it sounds religious, and it sounds like something you have to believe in, and it doesn't care if you believe in it or not any more than gravity cares if you believe in it. It just doesn't make sense to me that emptiness belongs to anything because it doesn't. Anyway, he wrote a very famous book, which is actually, in its essence, actually relatively brief. It isn't a particularly long book, but almost always when you buy a version of it, and there are many versions of it, the translation's ever so slightly different. And then there's always extensive commentary because even though it's a simple text, it's really hard to understand. It's not lots of moving parts. It's simple. It's just so antithetical to the way we usually perceive the world that we need a lot of commentary to help us understand, like, what did you just say? And the name of the book is the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, which is a really, really, really long one-word Mula Madhyamaka Karika. The verses or poems, the essence poems that describe the middle way. It's usually described of fundamental verses of the middle way, something like that. It's roughly what that title is translated as into English. Mula Madhyamaka Karika, and it's a central text in Madhyamaka Buddhism, emptiness Buddhism, right? And it strongly influences all of Mahayana, but Zen especially has been powerfully influenced by Madhyamaka Buddhism. So here's one sentence, well, two sentences actually, depending on how you break it down, from that book. This is Nagarjuna. There is no walker apart from walking. There is no walking apart from the walker. So I'll say it again, because you can see that's super, super simple, but really hard to get inside your head. There is no walker apart from walking. There is no walking apart from the walker. Super simple idea. I encourage you to spend time with that sentence and to see if you, in your own experience, can discover that as being true or false. Because it is a simple sentence. And translated into English, it has profound implications because you can imagine walker is the one who and has identity with, and walking is the activity. So see if you can think of an exception. See if you can find your way around this one. Fight with it if you want, right? Fight with it if you want. He was a master logician. Logic was Nagarjuna's tool, the sharpest blade of anybody. Lots of people who actually study logic, even if they aren't into Buddhism at all, are still required to read Nagarjuna because up to that point, no one had ever done with just simple logic. The left frontal cortex, no one had ever done anything like what he had done. It was profound, and the places he took it, we consider to be spiritual places. And so, because he was a Buddhist, we include him in our canon, really. And it's beautiful. It's an incredibly beautiful book. But at first, it just comes across as utterly cold, utterly logical, utterly left frontal cortex. There's no heart there at all. Turns out the whole thing is heart, and we just get to that heart by using, right, this idea of emptiness, sunyata, emptiness, and dependent origination, which means the walker and the walking have to co-occur. Dependent origination. In order for something to originate or start, both have to be present. You can't have walking start without a walker, and you can't have a walker without walking. So that's like the simplest sentence in the whole book, and then he expands and expands and expands on that very, very, very same idea. But if you get that principal idea, you get the whole thing, because the identity of a walker and the action of walking can't exist independently. The walker is only designated as a walker because the action of walking is taking place. And the action of walking is completely dependent on there being a person there doing the walking, right? A walker is required for walking. And we really do understand then, oh, there's no such thing as independent existence, right? This beautiful book, and we will get back to Ahmad Jamal, I promise. The Mula Madhyamaka Karika is essentially a proposition, some call it an argument, against the idea that there's a self that exists independently of anything, right? The walker doesn't possess an independent or separate or inherent nature apart from the activity of walking, or else you can't call him a walker. By showing that neither walking or the walker can exist without the other, and we can kind of see how that's true, we can sort of see that what he's actually doing, Nagarjuna, is actually rejecting the idea that on one side things have separate existence, that they're solid, that this is solid, the thing we call busho is solid, right? And the separate thing called clothespin is separate from me and solid. I am solid and it's solid and we're separate. And the altar behind me and the wall and the you and the computer, they're all separate. Is no, not really. That doesn't seem to be quite right. Or on one side, or the other side, which is nothing exists at all, nothing exists at all, there is nothing. It'd be like nihilism. There's no point to anything and nothing actually exists anyway. The middle way, which is why the book is called The Fundamental Verses from the Center or from the Middle, the verses of the middle way, the middle way in Buddhism, right? The middle way, the middle way, the middle way. The Buddha taught the middle way between extremes, right? Is, well, yeah, there is a walking and there is a walker. They're just not separate and they arise together. There is a creator and a creation, but they're not separate and they arise together. There is an Ahmad Jamal and there is a song. They arise together. So he's playing his piano and the song comes out. It's important that he's a jazz musician in this case because jazz, obviously, as you all know, is a genre of music that implies, or that always, I shouldn't say, oh, I think it does always actually imply improvisation. I sat down, I had a pretty good idea where this thing was going to go, but there are large sections where there's nothing on the page. I'm just see what happens on that day at that time, right? Improvisation, it's spontaneous. We make it up as we go. This is a powerful idea in Taoism too, which is like half of Zen. You make it up as you go. It isn't scripted, right? It's arising together. It's arising together. It's arising together. That's why we never know what's about to happen. So conventionally, we can say this person is walking, and that's a conventionally helpful thing to say. I strongly encourage you continue to say it. But if we analyze it really, 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 really carefully, we actually can only see a process. There's just something happening. And then we separate out walking from walker and musician from song. Pretty wild. That's as much as I think I want to say about emptiness. Little dips are plenty. That was probably 10 minutes too long. Emptiness, sunyata is a teaching that you catch. You just catch it like a cold. You just just hang around with it. Hang around with it. Read a little bit about it. Read Mula Madhyamaka Karika. Find a good translation. Read a little bit, put it down. Explore that idea, put it down. Just breathe with it. It actually doesn't. The reason I keep comparing it to gravity is on purpose. It just is. And you don't need to believe in gravity. No one needs to believe in gravity. You don't have to understand it. You don't. You literally don't. It's just there, right? It's not even an it. It's not even a separate thing. It's just happening, right? It's a happening and you are part of it, so it doesn't really matter. But why are we talking about it? Why is it a teaching in Buddhism? Why? Because when we do sit with it long enough, and we just kind of hang out with it, and we eventually catch it like we catch a cold, you start going, oh God, I kind of see it. It has an effect. It has an effect on the part of us that creates suffering. That's where the book goes. Spoiler alert. We use just logic, really close observation, clinical observation, walking and walker, walking and walker, walking and walker. And where it ends up leading us, strangely, is a very big opening of the heart. Oh, nothing's separate. When we actually begin to apprehend that with the organ down here, we get there maybe this way, right, through the brain. But when I really start to understand there is only self, there is only Buddha, there is only the one flesh, of course that impacts the way I live, how I feel, how I treat others. It impacts everything. How could it not? How could it not? I mean, of course, right? It's not a separate. And so, here's Ahmad Jamal again. We started with Ahmad Jamal. We had some nice Nagarjuna in the middle. We're going to end again. Because, boy, if you think jazz is complicated, or hard to get, some of you, Nagarjuna is really hard to get. So we'll soften up and then we'll be done. Ahmad Jamal says, you cannot give what you do not have. If you don't have peace within yourself, you can't project it through your instrument. Peace is not something you play. It is something that you are. Oh. Oh, I wish I could have met this man. How beautiful. Because again, we can see that little quote. Even out of context, which it is today by choice, we can imagine what he was being talked about, how he was being talked about, what he was being asked. Oh, you play such peaceful music. Okay, sure. But then again, can you see how a separation is happening and a quality is being projected and an ownership is being given and an idea that isn't actually true. You can't give what you do not have, he says. Everybody knows that. That's elementary school. If you don't have peace within yourself, you can't project it through your instrument. I will remind all of you, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, your body, your mind, your paws, this vehicle is your instrument. Of course, he's talking about the piano for him or any other instrument for a musician. But we're talking about something much bigger than this. This instrument, you can't project it if you don't have it. And we spend a huge amount of time doing this. This is what human beings do. Act smart, act brave, act peaceful, act, act. Most of what we're doing is acting. Everybody knows that. All the world's a stage. We are merely players. I'm not asking you to give up your persona. I'm asking you to realize that it is a persona and to feel in yourself the distance between the peaceful persona and your interior landscape. This is the turning toward. That's why Zazen, meditation, in the Zen tradition is always described as going in. You go in. Turn the light within. Turn the light within. Turn the awareness within. The investigation is within. Peace is not something you behave as. Peace is not something you play, he says. It's something that you are. So what I hope you can feel here, I hope what you can feel is our practice, and we all understand this, our practice, our spiritual practice, our Buddhist identity, if you are so bold, or so deluded, I guess. We know that our practice is peaceful to the extent that we are peaceful. Can't fake that. You can pretend, but it doesn't actually work, right? Peace isn't something that we have either. Remember where he started us? I didn't create that. I discovered it. It was there already. So when we sit down, we don't go, be peaceful, be peaceful, be peaceful, be peaceful, be peaceful. I understand why we would try to do that. But that's not it at all. We already are that. It's our truest nature. It's our truest nature. We already are that. Looking for it doesn't make any sense. What does make sense is when I sit down, instead of be peaceful, be peaceful, be peaceful, to shine the light on, oh, I can see the part of me that's fighting. I can see the part of me that's angry. I can see the part of me that's bitter. I can see the part of me that's confused. I can see the part of me that's greedy. I can list emotions all day. But all of them need the shining light. They all need relationship. These things need to be understood. How am I supposed to care about them if I don't even understand them? And I need to care about every single one of those moments of suffering, those belief systems, those memories. It's called karma in Buddhism. All of that karma, ancient and twisted, that shows up in this heart saying, and screaming for me, right. I will hold you. I'll get to know you. I'll understand. I'll listen. I'll look. I'll see clearly. Wow. Can you see that everything I just described is the activity of Buddha, the activity of peace, the activity of enlightenment, the activity of love? I care about you. You're included. What are you? Help me understand. I'm right here. Can you feel it? I am that thing. Seek and you are far away, the Shin Ming says. That's an ancient Taoist poem that's right at about the beginning of Zen. So some Zen people are like, well, it's really a Zen poem. It's probably really more Taoist than Zen, but boy, there's really a fine line. Seek and you are far away. Well, there's a crazy paradox. No, not a paradox. We realize you already are it. So seeking for it immediately separates. The more you seek, the further away you are. It isn't actually paradoxical. The hands are already together. So Nagarjuna was right. There is no peace apart from we. How could there be? How could there be walking apart from your legs? How could there be? Couldn't be. It isn't an identity. It's not an ownership. It's not a separation. It's not an object. Peace isn't any of those things. The myriad universes are there. They're already there. They're rising right now to meet your experiencing. To meet your experiencing. It's happening right now. You're arising together. You arise with the meeting with your senses, right? And your feelings. You're meeting the myriad universes in the circle of wonder in the realm of awareness itself, right? You're meeting the myriad universes with mutual recognition. I see you, right? And you can meet that as peace because you are peace. So it isn't a striving toward, it's already coming from, just like Ahmad Jamal taught us. Please be curious about your anger. Please be curious about your pain. Please be curious about your grief. Please be curious about your resentment, your resistance, your struggle. That's the human experience. Rush toward it. You don't need to pretend to be peace. You already are it. Just be curious. Hold it. Know it. Understand it. Look at it. It changes everything. It changes absolutely everything. Creator and created, no distinction arising together, right? Oh, discovery and discoverer arise together. Isn't that beautiful? Wow, no separation. Okay. Well, thank you for being along for the ride. I hope this worked. I don't know if it did or not. It made sense to me, strangely. But as I said, I've caught this. I've caught this stuff because I've been hanging out for a long time in these settings. Zen is caught, not taught, they say, and that's actually perfect. It's caught, not taught, and here I am trying to do the impossible, trying to teach it. You can't. I'm just reminding you of something you already are. So thank you for your patience. I so appreciate it. I'll see you next time, and in the meantime, look up Ahmad Jamal. Maybe he said some other really cool stuff, or listen to some of his pieces and ask yourself these questions, or try to find the walker apart from the walking, and try to find the walking apart from the walker, or look up Nagarjuna, see what you think. Dig around a little, be curious, and then when you're bored, do something else. Wonderful to see you. See you next time. Bye bye.